How you going, guys? Curtis from Cutting Edge Engineering. So today's job, we're going to be doing a bit of maintenance on our yard crane. So if you want to know a little bit more about it, we have done a previous video on a tour of the crane, which we will leave in the description below. In that video, there were a lot of things that I'd mentioned I'd wanted to do to the crane. I haven't achieved any of that just yet because of the workload and how busy we are. But not long after that video, the crane did develop a bit of a cough, and by cough I mean it sounds like it's misfiring. So a few viewers did comment when they heard the yard crane running that they believed it was a valve. I don't believe it is a valve issue, I believe it's a head gasket. So today I'm going to be changing the head gasket, but before I do that, I do need to give it a bit of a wash down and remove all the spider webs. And I do know there is a really large spider hiding up there because I have walked into him several times.
He lives in that hole up there.
This yard inhabits quite a lot of Australian creatures. I used to have a green tree frog living in the chain box. I've also had wasps up in the boom, so when you telescope out, you would piss them off and they'd come out and attack you. I've got spiders living in the cab and their homes are spread all over the machine. And I also have some greenery growing. The head gasket is the sealing surface between the head and the block of the engine. The head finishes here and the block begins. It sounds like it's blowing at the front of the head between number one and just behind the water pump. So the first thing I need to do, I'm going to take it outside, I'm going to give the whole engine a wash down and blow away all the cobwebs and everyone who's inhabiting them. Jeffrey! Righto, now that that's clean and dry, we're going to start doing the repair on the head, but while I'm at it, there are a few things I need to do. I am going to give it a full service. That's going to be oil filter and oil. We're also going to change the fuel filters on it as well. Although the machine hasn't done a great deal of work since its last service, I'm going to do it anyway because I am going to be putting impurities into the oil while I take the head off. So rather than risk anything weird going through the motor, we're just going to drop everything out of it. Once the repair is completed, then we can top everything up. So while I'm disassembling the engine, I will have a look around to see if there's anything else wrong or that could be repaired, and we'll go from there. So before I disable the crane totally, I do need to turn it hard one way in order to get to the drain plug of the sump. There's only a little bit of space between the sump and the frame of the crane. So by turning the crane hard one way, it'll give me the access I need. First thing I need to do, I need to drain the coolant, or what's left of it. I know there is a slight leak on this machine. I do have to top it up every couple of weeks. So we'll drain that and then we can start pulling apart the top of the motor. So we're going to undo this hose here and drain all the coolant into that pan. So that was a bit more coolant than I was expecting. Unfortunately, with these motors, there aren't many drain plugs on them that you can actually undo and drop all the coolant out of the block. There is one on the other side. I'm going to undo that and see if I can get the remainder out of the head through that. So the next thing I'm going to remove is the water manifold. So it runs down the side of the head and feeds coolant evenly through the motor. After that, it'll be the exhaust manifold. Then we can move on to the other side and start getting off all of the injector lines. The water manifold is not factory. I did make that. I hunted everywhere trying to find a spare manifold or a second-hand one that was in better shape than mine, and I couldn't get one. I did make this one to get me out of trouble so I could continue to use the crane, but there was a YouTuber who commented that he actually had one. Can you get in contact with us again? If you still have it, I would love to purchase it from you. Oh yuck, look at that.
Uh-huh.
So something of interest, because these engines are used in many different types of tractors and they're also used in cranes, the exhaust manifolds, they are universal. They can go right way up or upside down. In a crane configuration, they're pointed down to the ground, so there's no loss of sight for the operator. On a tractor, they're pointed up the other way because the exhaust goes out through the bonnet. On farms, exhaust point up for some reason. I think the only thing would be because of sparks getting out of the exhaust and setting something on fire. Also, they don't dust their crops with carbon. So we've got all the accessories off this side of the head. Now we're going to go on the other side and remove everything we need to off there. Oh, that feels like it's going to snap. No, that's going to snap for sure. That's going to be annoying. I don't want to. WD-40. That just snapped. See?
Oh my god.
That's why I don't use impact wrenches on old bolts. Let's get that out of the way. Take this one off instead. So this is the air cleaner. This supplies clean air to the motor. It is pretty sad, but it still works. So I still do need to take that bracket off, but now I've got a bit more room in there. Hopefully I don't snap another bolt because it'll just be one more I need to get out. Oh no, she's gonna break. We'll let that sit for a bit. We'll get the fuel lines off. this line here, that's just for the glow plug. So if you look down there, you'll see that plug. It feeds fuel and power and heats it, so it's a heating element in order to get it to fire up under cold conditions. Surprised it even came out. Righto, so that bracket's out of the way. I'll deal with that broken bolt later on. Next thing I'm going to do is remove the valve cover so we can get access to the top of the valve train. They're pushing down on certain valves, and if you try and undo one at a time, you can crack the shaft that goes through.
Wow,
So
okay.
you bring them up evenly. Washers. Yep. So on the back side of them, that landing,
Yeah.
that corresponds with the push rod. Push rods get pushed up by the cam lobes and they push down that valve. So the reason I've put the push rods in the box like this is I don't like to mix them up when I am pulling apart engines. They can vary in length a little bit, even though it's not really going to matter on this particular engine because the rocker system is adjustable. So you can adjust the end of the rocker in order to set your clearances. I still don't like to mix up the push rods, so I usually set them out in a piece of cardboard and I number them and I put them in as they come out of the motor. And if it was a fixed rocker style engine and you do mix them up, you could end up with issues later on with valves not fully closing. So I just don't take the risk and I don't mix them up. It. You're good. Oh. It's pushed onto the back of the water pump. Oh, good it goes in. Yep, that'll miss. Right, now that we've got all of that done, I can now lift off the head. Beautiful. Do this. Fantastic. Right, so we've got the head off now, and as I suspected, there is a blown head gasket, and it is blowing from number 1 out to behind the water pump. So now comes the task of cleaning everything up, and we're going to check out the head, make sure everything's okay with that. I'll flip it over, have a look at the valves, make sure everything's seating correctly. Definitely need to clean the bottom of the head. There is a lot of carbon built up around the valves. I didn't want to remove the injectors, but looks like I'm going to have to. They do protrude the head just a little bit. I don't want to damage them at all, so I will remove them. I do have new washers there, so I can refit them later on, but for now we're going to start cleaning the block.
Homeless, where's your chicken? Where is it? Up, there it is. Get it.
Righto guys, so we've got the block cleaned up. It is not the best, but I'm not going to pull the engine out in order to get it skimmed. I've just cleaned it up, made everything nice and flat, so our head gasket can reseal on top of that. Now we're going to get on to doing the head. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove the inlet manifold and just get it out of the way. I'm also going to pull out the injectors. And anyone who has noticed that the injectors were protruding the face of the head, and now I've put it face down, it's okay. I've got multiple layers of pig mat on the table, so the injectors are not going to get damaged. Nice and clean. Very gummed up. Oh. Perished. Just an O-ring, but they're all perished. Do that face first. Change the wheel over.
Hey, that's your head. Where's he?
Righto guys, so we've got everything cleaned up. Ideally, I would send the head out in order for it to be completely rebuilt, but it was running just fine before I pulled it apart. It just turned out to be the head gasket. So I'm not gonna go through the effort of doing the valves. I don't have the tooling here in order to cut seats or anything like that. Everything's cleaned up. We're gonna start reassembling the motor. First thing I need to do is put the head gasket back on, and then we can start putting this thing back together. So the head does need to align onto the two dowels that are in the block, and then you can bolt it down. Righto, so I'm going to torque the bolts up to factory spec, which is 110 foot-pounds, and to do that I'll be using a 1/2-inch drive deflecting beam torque wrench. So there is a specific way you'd need to do up head bolts, especially on these older engines. You start from the center and you work your way to either end of the motor and you bring it down evenly. And I always go back and double check the torque I've just applied to the bolts, because sometimes they do loosen up after you get the head tightened down. So with the head bolts done up, now I'm going to install the intake manifold and reinstall the injectors. so I'm not going to go and adjust the rockers just yet. I do want to start it and get oil flowing back through the motor. Then I can go through and reset all the rockers. Long life cool. Now that that's done, I'm going to drain the oil, replace the filter, and fill it with new oil. Minimum mark. Bang on, max. So before I can fire up the crane, there's one more thing I need to do, and that is to change the fuel filters.
Whoa.
Nothing funky in there. Actually not too bad. That's your pre-filter. That catches all of the larger debris, anything coming directly from the tank. Then it goes through the secondary filter to catch anything further before it goes into the pump. Righto, so I've replaced both of the fuel filters. What I need to do now is prime the crane in order for it to be started again. But this particular crane doesn't have a standard plunger style pump that you would pump by hand in order to get fuel back through the system. It uses an electric pump, but it still takes a little bit of time. It is basically the same method as the standard plunger style pump in order to bleed it. So I'll be cracking a lot of the injector lines off to allow all the air to escape before I attempt to start it. Righto guys, so that started pretty well trouble-free. What I need to do now is go in and adjust the rockers and just check the clearances between the rockers and the valves. We'll take the valve cover back off, go in there, and check all those. So to check the valve clearance, I'm going to be using a feeler gauge. Underneath our inlet side, we need to be 0.35 of a mil, and underneath our exhaust side, we need to be 0.45 of a mil. At the moment, 0.33 of a mil is a little bit tight, but you can't fit 0.35 under them. So I'm not going to make any adjustments on the inlet side. I'm just going to check the exhaust side. Just a little bit tight. So the rocker clearance is a little bit on the tight side. I'm going to wait till I put a few more hours on the machine before I go and adjust them. Just let everything settle down. The motor still hasn't come up to temperature, so things do tend to move and settle after they do get hot. So there's just one more thing that I need to do, and that is retrieve that broken bolt so I can refit the bracket and then the air cleaner. Righto, so that went really well. Just tacked a nut straight to the top of that and was able to extract it. It did take 2 goes. There are plenty of ways to retrieve broken bolts. Being able to weld a nut to it is probably the easiest. You can use easy outs. They do work in some cases, but I'm not a big fan of those. I've seen far too many of them broken. If I wasn't able to get it out using the tack the nut to it method, I would have drilled it out at the tapping size of the 3/8 bolt and then used a tap just to clean up the hole. Righto guys, so that is the head gasket repair and service completed. I've been wanting to do that for a while now, and I'm really happy that I've got that done because it's going to make it that much easier to sell this crane. And the reason we're selling it is we have upgraded to a larger capacity crane, which we've been wanting for a really long time, and it got to a point where we really needed it. So it will be sad to see this crane go, but we're not going to need it for much longer. So keep your eye out for a future video where you'll see our new crane. But that's this job ticked off the list. Thanks for watching. A few viewers have commented when they've heard the yard crane running.
Wow.
A few vi-
Oh my god.
A few vi-
That's so good.
through the filters, back through the Right, so I've replaced both of the fuel filters. Having trouble with F's.
Fuck off, Trey.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Oh, fuck.
That looks so weird. Is that more than you thought would be in it?
Yeah, a lot more.
How much coolant does this thing hold? Is that normal?
Fucking bit, apparently.
This is where all our towels have gone. Wow. Is she thirsty? Oh,
Oh, I just tipped that straight into my... Hey.
into your what?
Into my bloody...
Oh no.
Stop it. God. What is it doing here? Why is everything an odd size? Oh my god. Are you fucking serious? Really?
Is every bolt different?
It fucking looks that way. That'd be right.
Oh.
Really?
Oh.
Stop being a fuck. Are you serious? Why is there one odd hose clamp in the whole fucking lot? No, it's not. It's just really fucking shit.
Okay, I thought, wow, that came undone really easily. No, it didn't. Jesus.
Fucking hell, that stuff's really stuck on it. These things usually eat that. Fucking Willy Wagtail.
Grease on. Oh, I just smeared it.
Why would you smear it? Don't worry about it. You ready?
Okay.
Is it really noticeable?
Hello? Hi.
Hey, you guys come in here and shit on all my stuff. Go away.
It waddles. Oh, I should do a jump scare.
You should. You should. You should. You should.
Molly, Molly.
That wasn't even top gear.